Welcome to the Takeoff Podcast, the go-to construction podcast for construction professionals seeking inspiration, education, or motivation for the next steps in their career. Each Monday, you'll be joined by me, Mick Donaghy, Managing Director of Gedden Executive Recruitment and a respected name from the industry. A construction leader, a business owner, or someone in the thick of the action. The whole premise of this podcast is for you to get something from it. An idea, a connection, a mentor, whatever it is, I hope you get it. And I hope you enjoy the show. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Good.
Perfect. Okay, today on the Takeoff Podcast, we're delighted to be joined by Richard Austin. Richard is the CEO of Omni, one of Australia's leading fire safety and protection consultancy firms. Alongside many other things, Richard is a highly accomplished management and business development expert. He has a wealth of experience in digital innovation, customer-centric methodology, and has achieved significant success driving market share and results across a variety of sectors. What's super interesting is that Richard doesn't actually come from a traditional construction leadership background. In fact, Richard has a proven track record leading teams and building companies across financial services, supply chain management, insurance, tourism, travel, and media. Today in the show, we're going to find out more about Richard's journey, how he's adapted to the construction sector, and what the future looks like for Omni. Richard, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
Richard, do you mind sort of giving our listeners a bit of an overview of who you are, what you do on a daily basis? I never feel like I feel like I can do it justice.
Yeah, for sure. So certainly CEO of Omni, which is a great opportunity and certainly the type of role I've been aspiring towards for many years. Outside of that, you'll see me, up at 5 a.m. every day. I exercise every day. Very active out riding, badly running, and always being mindful about just being, healthy and well from that perspective. And then always consuming good, positive content. So avid Audible listener, podcast listener, and just love really consuming a really wide variety of topics and content there as well, from health to business to motivation, managing your mindset, and everything else that might be laid in between as well.
Perfect. No, really interested to discuss, and segment your background and track record a little bit more, Richard, because what most people listening to this show will, they're construction people, those coming from different backgrounds, different journeys, different countries. And one thing that's really interesting about your background, Richard, is that you're now in a CEO position of a really respected construction business, but maybe, without that construction technical background that might be, most people would perceive as being really important. So tell me more about how you've ended up in this role as a CEO of Omni and currently what maybe you're focused on.
Yeah, thank you. So very deliberately, prior to coming to Omni, I was running a financial services business, and we did everything from procurement to supply risk management. We set up a law firm within there, and we work with, in the end, 17 different credit unions, mainly up and down the eastern seaboard, but certainly scattered all around Australia, and achieved great milestones through that journey from 2017 through to, almost late last year. And Mutual Marketplace was great, but then I was really just motivated to go and look for this type of role. And so respectfully, I didn't know anything about the industry necessarily and Omni, but I was always being very, mindful about the sorts of organizations that I would ever look to go and work for. It needs to be aligned with who you are and how you operate as a person, but also needs to be the type of role where, we all spend a significant portion of our awake lives at work, and you want to make sure that on the most part, it's giving you what you want out of a place of employment. And Omni has been around 20 years, be our 20th anniversary this year. Pete and Marcello, that founded the business, who are still the shareholders of the business, still actively involved in the business at this time and sit on the board, and I report to the board. And so it was just, an opportunity that presented itself to me. I saw it through an executive recruiter, and then proactively went and chased it down. And as you would imagine, lots of conversations and interviews and tests just to make sure that I was the right person for this role. And I guess they concluded that I was, because here I am, near on 10 months into the role now.
What have you maybe learnt initially in your first sort of 10 months about construction that you maybe weren't aware of, or you felt maybe is quite different from, say, the financial services sector?
What I found really interesting, so as everybody is onboarded into Omni, we get them to complete a disc profile. And so disc profile is understanding the different personality types based on the standard set of survey questions that people respond to. And so everybody completes that, and I have become certified in training people on how to understand different personality types, then communicate and be versatile with their communication. And what I found really interesting coming in here is there's a heavy emphasis around a particular personality quadrant that sits within this industry, and it's analytical. And so you get a lot of deep thinkers, you get a lot of people that have invested a lot of time and energy in becoming really technically proficient at fire engineering and fire protection services, and certainly special hazards that we do, and fire safety compliance. And so it was just really interesting to be exposed to a group of people that have become amazing subject matter experts in a particular field. And so, where I had come from previously, a lot of generalists, yes, work with a whole load of lawyers at Mutual Marketplace, but it's a different type of person that elects to be an engineer and then become a fire engineer, and then invest, time, energy, and effort in being successful in this particular environment as well. So I guess it was just interesting to meet the team, meet the people, meet the broader industry, and then just start really, pulling the layers back of Omni and of the sector, and what has enabled Omni to be successful over what is decades now. And then, from my perspective, I'm not a subject matter expert in fire. I don't claim to be. I don't have aspirations to, to do a master's in fire. But what I'm really mindful of is about being very clear on, what are the steps and what are the processes that people need to navigate through in order to deliver the right outcomes. Because there's always a specific sequence of steps that people need to adopt, embrace, and be technically proficient at, which enables them to be successful within their given role. And so I spend a lot of time working closely with people, and then making sure that I create an environment that enables them to be successful in whatever their given role might be.
In terms of, obviously, you seem very process driven, which I would believe that those maybe in an engineer or subject matter expert such as fire safety and fire protection are going to have a lot of processes in place. What do you feel like has been is fundamentally maybe different from say other sectors that you've worked in compared to construction? Do you find that it's more difficult to win business? Is it more difficult to lead people, or is it very much fundamentally the exact same?
People are people, and what I'm mindful about is understanding who is it that you're communicating with, understanding how will they best receive information that you want to relay to them. So I'm always really mindful of my audience, whether it's a group of people or one particular person. And because if I can communicate with them in a way that they'll best receive that information on whatever the topic that it might be, I've got the greatest likelihood of them being then successful, going and operating as an extension of me within my particular role. What I'm also really mindful of, and I've spent a lot of time studying it over the years, is around situational leadership. And so there's a learning journey that we all navigate through when we're new to a particular task or an action. And there are different emotional stages that people work through as they're becoming competent in, executing a particular task. So I'm also really mindful about what is the right level of support that people need reflective of their capability, competency, and commitment to completing a particular task. And just because I find something easy doesn't mean it'll necessarily be easy for you or the next person. And undoubtedly, what you might find easy or somebody else doesn't mean it'll necessarily be easy for me there as well. Um, so I just try and be very mindful of that in the work that we do within the business. I'm very people focused because I absolutely believe if you get your team right, if you get the people right, and you create the right type of environment that enables them to be successful, I will also be successful. But if your people are not set up for success, I will never achieve what it is that I want to work towards achieving, within the role as CEO of Omni.
What does CEO do? So obviously it's a big job title. It's quite a prestigious role and opportunity. But what do you do each day, Richard? What does your day look like?
So I find and my prior role was different industry, yet similar. You need to be really comfortable from one meeting. So this morning I have spoken about finance, I've spoken about financial year objectives, I've spoken about marketing, spoken about digital presence and capability. Completing the final stages of board wrap up ahead of a board meeting later this week there as well. And then from here, you have the opportunity to come and spend some time with yourself. Straight after here, we then jump into with the CFO of Omni, and we'll spend time going reviewing financial year objectives from FY24, and then doing salary reviews from people there as well. And then the last part of the day is concluded with a one-on-one that I'll do sort of from about 4:30 to 5:30 this afternoon. And then you just try and then layer in over the top of the variety of different tasks that I'll do today. As one example is any emails that have come through, any escalations that have come through. I'm always really mindful about having a proactive approach around business development, client engagement, the different sector strategies that we have in place. So it's being really comfortable from 1 hour to the next, that what it is that you're required to focus on can be really varied, and being comfortable that you need to pop on a bunch of different hats on any given day within any given hour, and be okay that people come to you for guidance, advice, support, or whatever the scenario might be. And what I'm also really mindful of is I take it as my responsibility to be very even keeled going. Life is full of pressure, and whether that's role pressure and personal pressure that people experience. But people need to be able to look to me going, Richard's comfortable, Richard's in control. And yes, we might be sometimes faced with adversity, but together we will navigate through whatever's required to achieve, the appropriate outcome.
It's really interesting. Like, obviously there'll be a lot of people that are listening to this, Richard, that are hearing that and going, no, that's something that I aspire to. I would love to get into that type of role eventually in my career. Obviously, going back to your obviously previous life and life before Omni. What obviously you've worked across multiple different sectors. Can you tell me more about some of that work that you were doing that's maybe allowed you to become so comfortable in so many different aspects of the business, from finance, leadership, reporting, building teams, recruitment, all of that sort of stuff. How is that all sort of developed to who you are today?
Yeah, great question. And something I've been fortunate that I can demonstrate that my skills are transferable. And I've moved across quite a few different sectors over the years, and I'm really grateful that people are giving me the opportunity where I could do that. In any environment, regardless of what the environment might be, there are standardized processes that people need to work within. There are boundaries that govern the behavior which is acceptable in any different environment. And we're a for-profit organization there as well. And so I use data, and I use financial information and different statistical information in order to make informed decisions. But I'm also really mindful at the end or behind any set of data that you might be reviewing is a person, is a human. And then there are different variables which influence what might be happening in their life and within their world. And it's the same across every single industry. Yes, we've got people in Omni. They are highly technical and proficient and professional in relation to, fire protection, fire safety engineering. And in a prior life, worked across, finance, procurement, and legal. And it's the same. They are people that have elected to become deep subject matter experts in relation to a particular field. And then it's my responsibility to make sure that I create an environment that enables them to be successful, regardless of what that environment might be.
Is there anything that, like one thing that maybe you do each day that is more important than the other? For example, should a CEO be really strong in business development, sales, client engagement? Is it more focused on leadership? Is there anything that maybe tips the scales in terms of importance in your opinion, Richard?
Yeah, so I am always really mindful of what is the longer term objective that we are working towards. And then, so whether that's within a quarter, within a half year, within a financial year, across multiple, time periods there as well. And then I break it right down to what are the more granular steps that we need to be taking now in order to influence that, in order to move closer towards the realization of that particular goal. So I try and be really clear around what are the highest value tasks that I need to focus on, because I think everybody can be guilty of, I've been really busy today and I've replied to a bunch of emails and I've been really flat out, and maybe I sat in some meetings, some Teams meetings or whatever the scenario might be. And you get to the end of the day, it's like, I've just been treading water and I haven't been actually propelling myself forward. So, I make sure that I'm constantly reminding our leadership team, so we lay SMART goals over all the different actions that we assume responsibility over within the business. And then I constantly loop back in and check in with the team to make sure, all right, well, we need to achieve this particular outcome within this particular time period. Are we on track? Are we not on track? So that's generally, I think, I suppose, the biggest influencing factor, being really clear on what are those longer term overarching goals, which form a part of the strategic plan that we need to be working towards achieving. And then what are the daily, weekly, monthly actions that we need to complete in order to make sure that we get closer towards, the realization of that goal.
Mm. See, one thing that I've been working in the construction industry now for, I don't know, 13 years or something like that. And construction companies and people are quite adverse to change. There may be construction, I would deem it to be an industry that hasn't embraced change and technology and innovation maybe as much as other sectors. So one of those things as well is that people are so important in construction. It's you've obviously mentioned a number of times construction matter experts. Day one, how do you get the respect of those who are the subject matter experts when you don't come from maybe that type of background? How do you gain their respect from the outset, Richard?
Uh, so something I always choose to do is work on connecting with people because they're human. I'm
Mm-hmm.
human, you're human, and I'm always really mindful about what are the various influencing factors that help make you who you are. Your family, your friends, your lifestyle, all the other variables that come into play that influence whether you rock up to work and your best version of yourself, or you rock up to work and you're really distracted on a particular day. So I make sure that I'm very people focused and connecting with the humans that choose to come and work for Omni, or makes them choose to come and work here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then, being available to listen, to show empathy, to provide solutions, and I'm not the subject matter expert when it comes to, fire safety engineering. And when people come and communicate challenges, problems, and issues with me, I make sure I can work with them in a way where I can lean back into my strengths, and where I'm not the guy that might necessarily have the answer. Well, who are the other people within the business that I can draw upon that have that experience, that might have that information, and that can help them navigate through, whatever those challenges might be at that particular point in time. And then, just be real. Like, just,
Mm.
you know, be yourself. I love to have a laugh. I love to layer humor in, in the work that we do, because, without a bit of fun along the way, it gets pretty boring really quickly. But then also, be really clear around what are the expectations that govern all of our employment? What are the expectations that govern the things that are expected of you within the role that you fulfill, and make sure that they're aligned around those, and then they're clear on what good looks like as well, so they can actually work through, you know, whatever the time period might be, knowing that they're also working towards achieving a particular outcome, which is expected of them within the role that they fulfill.
It's kind of sounding to me nearly like a president role, like a vice, like a prime minister. You know how a prime minister has so many different people in advising them from the arts and leisure and economy, and obviously you're relying on them to give you that maybe technical insight, and you're there to provide something slightly different from some extent.
Yeah, certainly wouldn't draw parallels between myself and a prime minister
Yeah,
or a president. Just a
yeah,
guy having a crack.
yeah.
But um, and what I also find, and I used to have this conversation back at where I was previously, and it's not different here now. It's just a different environment. 99% of technical people's lives is focused on fire. And I
Mm,
remind people that when you're having a conversation with a developer, with a government official, with an architect, with a design engineer, or whoever it might be, fire is just a small portion of their life. It's not discounting the importance of it, but
mhm.
we need to be really mindful when we're communicating with them, working with them. What is their level of capability and competency in relation to the obligations that they have on a project related back to fire? And what level of support do we need to provide them as our client, as our key stakeholder, to make sure that when they engage with Omni, when they engage with you as a subject matter expert around fire, that we're giving them that good experience. So next time they're confronted by some issues or a project where they need a hand, they organically just will gravitate back to us to go, hey, you were really great last time we worked together, so I'm going to come and work with you again because you made my life easier.
One thing I noticed about doing a bit of research on Omni, it seems quite really the branding of it's really modern. It seems to be quite quite new and quite fresh. What's the sort of idea about the vision of Omni over the long term, Richard?
So Omni has built up over a couple of decades, as I had said previously, to be one of the largest, pure fire consulting firms in Australia. And you would certainly still say they're right up in that, top three in relation to the pure fire consulting firms that are out there. And, we are just focused on growing and evolving. We have great market presence within Queensland. We have a good footing within New South Wales, and we have a solid presence within Melbourne and Victoria there as well. And so for us, it's continue, to be the preeminent fire engineering firm within Australia, continue to, secure good projects, continue to partner with reputable businesses that are ethical with the way that they operate and the projects that they run, um, and really focused on making sure that we operate, commercially, so we're always commercially viable. But undoubtedly, we are here to grow and evolve in a commercially sensible way. So we are always actively out looking for new people to come and join. We are actively looking to create new roles, to manage the growth that we continue to experience there as well. And that's not going to change, over the medium term and certainly over the longer term. And then what we've also done, probably, certainly in my time, is forge some really great partnerships with some different industry experts and organizations there as well. So where we can't always be everything to everybody, well, let's go and identify some other great, professionals within the industry, and let's go and work alongside of them, and let's go and partner with them. So collectively, we can drive a better outcome than what we might have been able to by ourselves.
What type of businesses would you typically partner with, Richard? Is it predominantly main contractors? Is it architects? Engineers? What type of businesses? What who are your client as per se?
Yeah, everything from we work across health, aged care, defence, education, commercial buildings, industrial. So you think about so you live in Brisbane as well, you think about some of the most significant projects that you might see in and around Brisbane. We've worked on a really significant portion of those. There's a lot of activity happening right now to work towards securing Olympic related work, and we're very proactive in that particular space, looking to go and partner with different, whether they be architects, developers, and builders that are out there as well, so we can form an alliance in relation to securing some of that work there also. But really broad, we undoubtedly partner with different fire engineering firms where there's some I suppose commonality of things that we both want to achieve separately, but then also together. But then, yeah, you name a different stakeholder that has some type of interest associated with, the construction sector and the built environment. We have some sort of partnership in place with them.
Great, great. No, it's a really interesting side of the market. Obviously it's an area that is always sort of difficult to find great quality people, and obviously not in terms of just the technical skill set is quite unique, and it takes certain, as you say, subject matter experts to come in to really help develop and grow the business. When you mention, obviously, Richard, you're always on the lookout for great people to come in, help grow the business. What would you be looking for, just in case there's people listening to this that might be interested in reaching out?
Yeah, so we have all various levels of seniority within the business, right from grads, people with a limited amount of industry experience, right through to we've got doctors that have completed their PhDs within a
Wow.
business, and kind of all the different levels of seniority, within a grad through to, having a doctorate. And so it really depends at a particular point in time as to what is the right type of person that we would be looking for. We're looking for people right now within Sydney, and we secured somebody recently within Sydney there as well. We have sponsored people to, move from overseas to Australia. We've done that quite a few times over the years. And we've got a particular person that we've secured internationally right now, and we're working with them to, navigate through the visa process, and support them to come and then relocate to Australia as well. So we undoubtedly look domestically. We have relationships in place with different institutional providers there as well, because they're always looking for different industry partners. And so we have them in place domestically, we have them in place internationally. And then, just looking LinkedIn, looking through different social media platforms is a great way to identify who are some people out there, and doing direct engagement. We've got some good relationships also in place with different recruiters that have deep industry experience, and so leveraging those. And then we invariably get a steady flow of people connecting through our website. And if there was a particular person out there listening right now and they were interested in having a conversation, by all means, reach out through LinkedIn. Always happy to have a chat. But they can definitely, submit an expression of interest through our website as well.
Great, great. What qualities do you look for, Richard, from maybe a people perspective when you're looking to hire someone?
So for me, it's important to have a degree of resilience. If anybody has worked on certainly big infrastructure projects and, large scale or high value projects where you have a myriad of different stakeholders, you have to be resilient. You have to be okay with adversity, with projects stopping and starting, and receiving increased levels of pressure at different points in time, reflective of what might be transpiring within a project life cycle. So being okay with that, I think it's really important that people develop courage and capability within themselves where they're okay to pick up the phone, they're okay to reach out and have a conversation with somebody, they're okay to deliver what can sometimes be uncomfortable or bad news because something has been derailed through the particular stages of a project. But then also, we want people that aren't going to cut corners. We want people that are focused on doing it right. If you think about the work that we do and the role that we play, in the delivery of projects, our work is there to save lives. And, it's something incredibly important when you think about any particular project. And whilst it might not be the most significant portion of a project, when you think about the value of the work that we do compared to a structural engineer as an example, but the work that we do at the end of the day, and we hope it never happens, but if and when it does happen, having the right infrastructure, having the right processes in place within, a building or some type of infrastructure project enables lives to be saved. And that's
Mm.
incredibly important, regardless of the value that might be associated with the work that our team do on a particular project.
Yeah, well, we all seen that. I think it was was it the Grenfell Tower in the UK
Yep.
a number of years ago. Obviously, watching that was terrifying. So obviously the work that you do so important. In terms of the market and maybe challenges that you're seeing out there at the moment, Richard. What are you seeing in the marketplace right now?
Certainly, I think Victoria, they've been through many years of good times, and the government's been investing, and there's been a lot of different infrastructure projects that have, gone live and been seen through to completion. Victoria, from an economic perspective, is in having a tough time at the moment, and so that'll definitely have an impact on what sort of projects are approved and what goes through, and then who will be the fortunate party that helps deliver any of those projects as well. With Queensland, we've got an election coming up in October, so there'll be a lot of projects that we're anticipating will be greenlit on the back of the election. And so at the moment, is it Labor, is it Liberal, and then we'll see how that plays out. Certainly, some different media outlets speculating as to how that might evolve at this time. But depending on who is successful within that election within Queensland will also then influence the types of projects that will be approved. We've got the Olympics coming up in 8 years, like the
Mm.
runway to build infrastructure, buildings, stadiums, aquatic centres, whatever it might be. The every single delay is a day that you don't get back. So really important to get over the milestone of the election and then accelerate into the delivery of the multitude of different projects that have to be delivered, within a pretty short period of time when you think about the size and complexity of those different projects as well.
Yeah, no, that's true. I remember when they released the news about the Olympics. I think it was 2020, 2021 time. But looking back now, we're nearly 30% of the way through. That time period. And 8 years is nothing. It's just going to go like a blink of an eye. So we've really got to start making some decisions based around that. I guess in terms of there'd be some people listening to this, Richard, that maybe have aspirations of getting to more sort of executive roles, executive sort of senior level positions like yourself. What type of things should maybe they look to invest in over the long term? Is it communication? Is it knowledge and expertise? Is it maybe getting an MBA, something like that? What do you feel like someone could do to really help them boost their chances of growing in the industry?
Yeah, so I did my master's in what seems like a really long time ago, and that's because it was. And I think it's really important that people are always on a continuous learning journey, and whether it's I'm doing, a undergrad, I'm doing some type of master's degree, or I'm just continuously doing short courses because that makes sense based on where I'm at within my career. I think that's always really important, but there is no discounting the learning that you just get by being on the tools, being on the job, and living and breathing it every day. And what can be really great for people is, whether it's a coach, whether it's a mentor, but go and engage with people that have navigated down the pathway that you aspire to work towards. If you want to be in my type of role, then go and engage with somebody who's already in that role and then be really mindful of, well, what are the things that you did which led up to you being successful in obtaining that particular position? And then that's, it's about having visibility over what is that longer term goal that I want to work towards achieving.
Mm-hmm.
And then what are the smaller, um, goals that I need to achieve along the way. They're going to set me up, in the best way to be seen in the right light. Where that opportunity does become available, I can put myself forward and give myself the best possible chance of being successful in being appointed to a particular position.
You know, that's really interesting. I think you might find a few people reaching out to you listening to this sort of taking you up on that advice. What's exciting you about the market right now, Richard? Obviously, Queensland's in a really unique, I guess, it's in a unique position, and when we see New South Wales and Victoria, it's a bit more static in those markets, and we're seeing maybe more competition coming into Queensland. Um, but what's exciting you about the general market and the business itself?
Uh, we're on a growth trajectory, which is always really exciting. It's always excellent to be a part of an environment where you're growing and evolving. And as recently we set up within the fire protection services, we set up a special hazards division that we didn't have operationalized within the business previously, and so that gives us the ability to now go and work, whether it be oil and gas, mining, and have a different type of consulting focus that Omni hasn't done in years gone by. So that's really exciting. It kind of opens up avenues. We do a lot of fire safety compliance within the organisation there as well, where we act as owners agents, but we're out doing the annual fire safety compliance checks, whether it be industrial or different buildings, to make sure that they are compliant and the sprinkler systems operate as they're supposed to, and the exit paths, aren't blocked up because somebody's elected to, go and store a bunch of different product in them there also. So yeah, it's really exciting to, be a part of an organisation that's growing and evolving. But because of the competitive nature, certainly within Queensland, there's a lot of competition out there, and that's always a part of life. But it's always then rewarding if you secure work, and we regularly do. It's just not served up on a platter these days. That you have to go and put forward, your best pitch, and then go and put forward your best team, and then go and make sure that, you demonstrate that you have the ability to go and deliver on the promises that you make within a fee submission there as well. And so we are actively out there engaging with a really wide cross section of the community and of the sector, and we're fortunate that we continue to secure certainly some high valued infrastructure type work, but also a lot of smaller projects. People still come and lean into Omni when they've got some smaller projects that they need help with, or some smaller issues that they need assistance with. So it's that you've got some great larger projects that continue to come through and we continue to work on, but then we've also been fortunate to continue to support smaller and lower value projects as they come up as well.
Great. Sort of finishing the show on a more of a, I guess, if there's someone who's following, maybe listening to this, that is maybe from a different part of the market, maybe they're something similar to yourself, like legal or financial services or insurance. What advice would you give them, maybe just to get into construction, not even just to get into the more sort of senior level roles, but maybe to try moving into more of an operational role, as an example, within construction, because that's the majority of people listening to the show, Richard?
Yeah, okay. And absolutely. I think it's being really clear on, well, what are the skills that I have developed over time, and then assessing them against the requirements of whatever the role might be, which is of interest to you. And then what I believe people would quickly identify, there'd be a lot of commonality of requirements. And yes, there are unique elements, to the construction industry, as there was certainly within financial services. But there's also going to be a common thread of jobs, tasks, and actions that people need to do that are industry agnostic. So, be really clear around what are the things that I'm good at, what are the things that I think could transfer over to a new industry or a new role within that, and then start exploring it. If you don't go out and you don't have conversations and you don't connect with people, It's like having an amazing shop down a laneway with no signage to entice people to come in. You need to put the signs out the front. You need to entice people. You need to showcase yourself. If you think about LinkedIn as your own personal website, what are you communicating within there? Are you communicating the right type of information that showcases you as a potential great candidate that people would be interested in then having a conversation with to then assess whether you'd be somebody that they want, to have working for their business? So it's being really mindful about um, how do I present myself? Whether it's when you rock up to work every day, whether it's you're going to networking events, whether it's your digital identity, which is out there, which is incredibly important. And it's not just these days, what's my LinkedIn profile tell about me? How do I behave on Facebook, Instagram, and every other social media platform that's out there as well? Because I absolutely know when people are assessing candidates these days, they go and look through a variety of these different platforms. And if you're not communicating the right image that you want to portray to your potential employer or to the community or to people that are out there, you will get judged accordingly, whether it's a good version of you or whether it's a bad version of you. So be really mindful about all the different, and I suppose, platforms that you have a presence and that you are active, and make sure that it's a good reflection of who you are as a person and how you want to be seen by anybody that might be kind of judging you.
100%. That's some amazing information that you've provided there, Richard. I speak to business leaders every single day, and the main thing that they say about what's the most important thing within construction, it's communication. It's the ability to communicate with others, whether that's, a stakeholder, a subcontractor, a consultant, an engineer. It's been able to, doesn't need to be, as you say, you don't need to be an expert in that, but you need to be able to confidently communicate and be able to build relationships. I think that's super, super important. And what you mentioned there as well about, I guess utilizing what you've done to maybe transfer, into construction. I remember there was a lady that I was representing, and she had a real burning desire to move into construction. And at that time, I think she was working on like displays. So she used to build event displays, for large sort of conferences and that sort of thing. I think she was in sales or something like that. And I said, but maybe go and look at doing a short course, like a diploma or, something like that, just to have on your CV. She went away, took my advice, done the diploma, and I was hosting an event for graduates, and I asked her to come along. She was a bit more senior, had kids. And that night she left the room with 7 offers. Seven offers. And ironically, she now works in fire protection engineering, which is quite interesting. And that's someone who effectively just had a burning desire, no pun intended, to get into the industry and managed to sort of reverse engineer it, which was super impressive.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's I'm not going to advocate can't just jump in and all of a sudden be a fire safety engineer. But if you come from marketing or finance or people and culture or business support, that is absolutely industry agnostic, and you can transfer those skills across industry. And if you're working in a different industry right now, you could absolutely, whether it be a sideways move or a demotion or a promotion, there are definitely different types of roles out there that you can work towards, secure, and gain a foothold, certainly within the construction industry, if that's a goal of somebody.
Absolutely, and as someone who works in the recruitment industry on a day to day, I know so many recruiters that have went from recruiter in the construction engineering sector to business development for a client to account manager to operations manager, and all of a sudden, they're in a senior executive role for a specialist construction engineering business. So there's so many different ways that you can get into the industry, and this is the reason why I wanted to chat to you today, Richard. Find out more about how you've done that and what the future looks like for Omni. So thank you so much for being a guest on the Takeoff. If there's anyone out there that might be interested in maybe applying for a job or connecting with you further, what's the best way to get in contact?
By all means, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can always send me a private message. I think my contact details are probably up on our website there as well. So, have the courage if you have goals, aspirations to move, have a conversation, reach out, diversify in your own career. Have the courage to pick up the phone, have the courage to reach out, whether it's to me or to anybody who might be within the industry. One way to stand out in the very first instance is having the confidence and courage to reach out, connect, and not about trying to push your services on somebody, but just reach out to make connections and add value, to those people. If you think about different people that operate within the sector, everyone's pretty time constrained these days, so be clear on, well, what is something that I could do to add value to that person that might make their life just slightly easier, for having that connection.
100%. Some great advice in that summary, Richard, and throughout the episode. So thank you so much for being a guest on the Takeoff, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a good afternoon.
Before you go today, guys, I'm just going to ask you to do one thing. Can you please go to Apple right now or Spotify right now and just give us those 5 stars? Hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference you wouldn't believe. The whole idea of this show is to inspire, educate, and motivate our listeners. And we only do that if we're getting the best guests. The best guests want to see data. They want to see information. They want to see how many listeners that we get. And so all of this stuff is really, really important. So if you can just literally go and do that today, if you enjoy the show, just go and hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We're going to continue to push this out there every Monday. So if you can, hit that 5-star button. And if you can't, even share it with a friend. Go on to WhatsApp, flick it on to your crew. Guys, thank you so much for listening. On to next week.